in the heart of the Pannonian Basin, where the winds whispered tales of conquest and the rivers flowed with the blood of empires. The fate of nations hung in the balance. It was the year 454 AD, and the once mighty Hunnic Empire, led by the fearsome Attila, stood on the brink of collapse. The Huns, under the banner of their legendary leader Attila, had terrorized Europe for decades, earning the ominous title of the Scourge of God. With unmatched ferocity and cunning, they had carved out an empire that struck fear into the hearts of all who dared oppose them. But even the mightiest of empires are not immune to the tides of fate. As Attila's power grew, so did the resistance against him. Tribes and nations that had long suffered under the Huns' yoke began to unite, driven by a common desire for freedom and vengeance. Among those who rose against the Huns were the Gepids, Ostrogoths, and other Germanic and Slavic tribes, led by a coalition of formidable leaders determined to break the shackles of oppression. At the forefront of this alliance stood Ardaric, king of the Gepids, a warrior of unmatched courage and saint. The stage was set for a clash of titans, a battle that would determine the fate of empires and reshape the course of history. At the Battle of Nedao, on the banks of the eponymous river, the forces of Attila and his Hunnic horde faced off against the united might of their enemies. The battle raged fiercely, with swords clashing, arrows flying, and the earth trembling beneath the thunderous charge of cavalry. Attila, the legendary warrior king, fought with the fury of a cornered beast, leading his warriors into the fray with unmatched ferocity. But even Attila's indomitable will and military prowess could not stem the tide of fate. The coalition forces, bolstered by their sheer numbers and unwavering determination, gradually gained the upper hand, driving the Huns back with each passing hour. As the sun set on the blood-soaked battlefield, the once invincible Hunnic Empire lay in ruins. Attila, facing defeat for the first time in his storied career, retreated with the remnants of his army, his dreams of conquest shattered by the forces of destiny. The Battle of Nedao marked the beginning of the end for the Huns' dominance in Europe. In the years that followed, Attila's empire crumbled, torn apart by internal strife and external pressure from resurgent kingdoms and empires. But while the Huns faded into history, their legacy endured. The memory of Attila, the Scourge of God, lived on in tales of conquest and terror, a reminder of the fleeting nature of power and the inevitability of downfall. In the year 454 AD, the winds of change swept across the vast expanse of the European continent. The once mighty Hunnic Empire, led by the fearsome Attila, stood on the brink of collapse. The Battle of Nedao would mark the culmination of a series of events that would seal the fate of the Huns and Al. As the sun rose on the morning of the fateful battle, the air crackled with tension. On one side stood the Huns, renowned for their ferocity in battle and the terror they instilled in their enemies. Led by Attila himself, they were a formidable force that had ravaged lands far and wide, leaving dust. Opposing them were a coalition of tribes, united by a common goal: to rid their lands of the scourge of the Huns once and for all. Among them were the Ostrogoths, Gepids, and other Germanic tribes, each with their own grievances against the Hunnic invaders. The battlefield at Nedao was shrouded in mist, adding an eerie atmosphere to the impending clash of titans. The ground trembled beneath the hooves of thousands of horses, and the air echoed with the clang of swords and the war cries of warriors ready to do battle. Attila, mounted atop his steed, surveyed the scene with a steely gaze. His dark eyes burned with determination as he urged his warriors forward, his presence alone enough to strike fear into the hearts of his foes. But even the mighty Attila could not foresee the events that would unfold on that fat. The battle raged on for hours, each side locked in a deadly dance of death and destruction. Swords clashed, arrows flew, and blood stained the earth as the two armies fought tooth and nail for supremacy. But as the day wore on, it became increasingly clear that the tide was turning against the Huns. The coalition forces, fueled by their desire for freedom and vengeance, fought with an unmatched ferocity, driving the Huns back with each passing moment. In the midst of the chaos, Attila fought like a man possessed, cutting down his enemies with ruthless efficiency. But even his legendary skill and prowess could not stem the tide of the battle. As dusk fell on the battlefield, the Huns found themselves surrounded on all sides, their forces depleted. In a final, desperate gambit, Attila rallied his remaining warriors for one last charge. With a thunderous roar, they surged forward, determined to fight to the last breath, but it was all in vain. The coalition forces held firm, their resolve unshaken by the onslaught. Slowly but surely, they closed in on the Huns, cutting them down one by one until none were left standing. As the dust settled and the cries of battle faded into the night, a profound silence descended upon the battlefield. The Battle of Nedao had come to an end, and with it, the reign of the Huns. In the aftermath of the battle, Attila's empire crumbled into dust. The once feared Hunnic horde was scattered to the winds, never again to pose a threat to the peoples of Europe. The Battle of Nedao had changed the course of history, marking the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter for